my custom scarecrows by the prowler. Having and running a farm, we rely on our crops to make a living, and not just a living for ourselves, but we also provide for our community with the products that come from our farm and from our crops. Needless to say, we have to protect our crops with all our power, with all the means at our disposal, and one of those means are scarecrows. A simple way of protection, you might be thinking to yourself, but our scarecrows at Delwood Farms are different. I take meticulous time and effort at crafting each and every scarecrow on the property. The sewing of every stitch, the clothing, and the stuffing, which is quite unique, by the way, is all meticulously planned. Let's get back to that stuffing. While your typical farmer on a typical farm stuffs their scarecrows with straw and hay, we here stuff ours with the human remains of our enemies, transients, drifters, or anyone who's a general nuisance to our operation. I must say it is a genius way of covering up a murder or two. Don't you agree? Running this farm is my profession, but creating our scarecrows is my preferred hobby. There is nothing more satisfying than a good savage kill. And once I've satisfied my bloodlust, I sew them up nice and neat. And there you go, a beautifully custom macabre scarecrow. Our farm, by the way, is known for our hauntingly beautiful scarecrows. That and our corn. Best cobs in the country, I'm told. On Halloween, we combine the two and showcase a haunted Halloween corn maze. If these people only knew how close they were brushing up against death, they would probably be shitting their pants. What a lovely image. A field full of scarecrows and a fresh crop that's transitioned in every year. That means constant killing. It's a dirty, strenuous job, but someone has to do it. I try and stick to a no locals policy, mainly killing drifters. But mistakes do happen. Sometimes my murderous temper gets the better of me. A group of teenage punks were fucking around in my fields one fall evening, destroying my crops. Dead. A neighbor of mine, also a fellow farmer, tried stealing from me. Resources and livestock. Guess what? Dead. It caused quite the stir amongst the police. Word of a serial killer began to spread, but that noise quelled down when I went on a hiatus. So from now on, I try my best to stick to people who will not be missed. The killing can go forever at this point. So be careful when you're traveling past a cornfield, because it might be mine. And if that's the case, then there's a good chance you'll be decorating my haunted field this Halloween night. The Harvest Man. When my grandparents were children, their small farming town had one rule that everyone obeyed: never stay out past dusk during harvest season. They said it wasn't safe once the cornfields began to whisper. It started the autumn my grandpa was 10. The town's children began to vanish, one after another, always near the fields. No footprints, no screams, no trace. Just the echo of laughter that trailed off into the rows of dry, rustling stalks. My grandpa remembered the first boy, Tommy Hiller. He'd been sent to fetch a ball that had rolled into the corn. His mother said she saw the scarecrow move as the boy disappeared. At first, everyone thought she'd gone mad with grief, but then it happened again. The scarecrow had stood in the same field for decades, patched burlap skin, crooked grin stitched with twine, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over its straw-stuffed head. It was supposed to frighten away crows, not children. But after that autumn, folks swore its grin got wider each year. My grandpa and his sister June didn't believe the old stories until the night they decided to prove them wrong. Under the silver of a harvest moon, they snuck out with a flashlight and crept into the fields. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of earth and rot. Every cornstalk whispered, brushed against them like fingertips. When they reached the center of the field, the scarecrow stood waiting. June said it was just wind that made the head turn. Grandpa swore it looked at them. The stitched grin twitched just slightly. Then the flashlight flickered and died. In the dark, they heard footsteps. Not shuffling, not dragging, walking, slow, measured, coming closer. Grandpa grabbed June's hand, and they ran. The corn seemed endless, the rows shifting and twisting, swallowing them. When they first burst free into the open air, June wasn't holding his hand anymore. They found her the next morning, standing where the scarecrow had been. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. Just stared with empty eyes, straw poking from her sleeves and collar. The scarecrow was gone. After that, the town burned the field. They said it was to stop a pest infestation, but everyone knew better. The disappearances stopped, and the whispers in the corn fell silent. Grandpa never went near a field again. He said if you looked hard enough in certain patches of wild corn that grew along the edges of town, you could still see bits of burlap and twine tangled in the stalks, like someone trying to grow new skin. And every autumn, when the moon hangs low and orange over the fields, if the wind is just right, you can hear a child's voice calling from the corn.
Help me! The harvest man is hungry again.
The Scarecrow's rounds. The Scarecrow had stood in the Blanchard family's cornfield for nearly 50 years. Stuffed with straw, dressed in tattered flannel, its burlap face painted with a crude grin and hollow eyes. It had always leaned a little to one side, until it didn't. Ellie Blanchard first noticed it one evening while washing dishes. Through the window, she saw the Scarecrow standing at the edge of the yard, closer to the house than usual. She frowned, calling her husband, but when he went outside to check, it was back in its usual place. They laughed it off. Maybe she'd been mistaken. Maybe the light was playing tricks. But the next morning, footprints appeared on the porch, long impressions of burlap and straw, trailing from the cornfield to the door. That night, Ellie heard soft scraping against the siding, then tapping on the kitchen window, slow and deliberate. She froze in bed, clutching the blanket, her breath shallow. When she dared peek through the curtains, the Scarecrow stood beneath the porch light, its grin wider, the eyes painted darker. like wet mud. Her husband burned it the next morning, muttering about vandals and pranks. The flames licked the straw until nothing was left but ash. For a time, the farm was quiet. Then came the rustling, not wind, but something dragging through the rows of corn at night. Something that whispered her name in a dry, papery voice. One dawn, the cows were found dead in the barn, neck bones snapped clean, straw scattered around them, and in the center of the floor, sitting upright, was the scarecrow's head, sewn back together with fresh twine. Ellie fled the farmhouse that night, but as she turned the car down the dirt road, headlights caught movement in the rearview mirror. A figure stepped out of the corn, its limbs jerking stiffly, straw spilling from its sleeves. It raised one arm and waved, slowly, mockingly. Its painted smile split open, revealing something dark and wet beneath. By morning, the Blanchard farmhouse was empty. Only the scarecrow remained, standing on the porch this time, watching the fields. And when the wind blew, you could swear it whispered, "Home." The Scarecrow at Sundown. The cornfield behind Old Man Weller's house always looked different at sunset. The stalks turned the color of dried blood, and the scarecrow, propped in the middle of it all, cast a shadow too long for its frame. When I was 10, my grandfather warned me not to go near it after dusk. He said it was made from more than straw and old rags. He said the man who built it had used something alive. I never believed him. Last summer, when the sun was sinking low and the air was heavy with the smell of dust, I decided to prove him wrong. The scarecrow's coat hung in tatters, its burlap head sagging to one side. I could see bits of black thread where its mouth had been stitched into a grin. Its eyes, buttons, I thought, seemed to glint wetly in the dying light. I stepped closer, laughing to myself, but the laughter caught in my throat when I noticed the ground around its post. The earth was freshly turned, damp, like something had been buried or unburied. Then came the creak, a slow, drawn-out sound, the wood twisting, the scarecrow's head tilted up. I froze. One button eye had fallen away, leaving behind a dark hole that dripped. It took me a second to realize the scarecrow wasn't tied to its post anymore. The ropes lay at its feet, frayed and broken, as it began to move, stiffly, like a puppet learning to walk. The sun slipped behind the horizon. Shadows swallowed the corn. I backed away, but the stalks behind me rustled, closing in. The scarecrow's grin widened as it took another lurching step forward. Something whispered through the field, not the wind, too deliberate. "Thank you for setting me free." I turned and ran, crashing through the rows until I burst out by the old dirt road. I didn't stop running until I saw the lights of the town. The next morning, the sheriff went out to the field. The post was empty. The scarecrow was gone. But the soil around it was still wet. And when they dug it up, they found footprints, bare, human ones, heading straight toward the houses on the edge of town. And when night fell again, someone new was hanging in the cornfield. The Watcher in the Field. The old farmhouse still stands at the edge of the country road, weathered gray and leaning into the wind. Its windows are clouded with dust, its doors half rotted, but it's not the house that keeps people away. It's the scarecrow in the field beside it. No one knows who built it. The family who once lived there packed up and left decades ago, leaving everything behind. Furniture, dishes, even clothes on the line. But the scarecrow stayed. Its black hat droops with age. Its coat flaps in the wind. And its burlap face is sewn into a crooked grin. The strange thing is, the straw never seems to rot. People say if you drive past after sundown, you'll see it standing a little different each time. Sometimes facing the field, sometimes the house, sometimes the road. Hunters have tried to take photos, but their cameras fail, or the film comes back black. One boy claimed he saw it turn its head, slow and stiff, to follow his car as he drove by. He doesn't talk much anymore. Last year, an urban explorer came to record a video inside the farmhouse. His last footage showed the front porch, the whisper of wind through the wheat, and the scarecrow's shadow stretching long and thin across the ground. He never came back. The sheriff found his equipment weeks later, all of it arranged neatly on the farmhouse steps, as if someone had set it there for collection. Now, on still nights, people passing by swear they see a figure standing in the upstairs window, tall and thin, watching the road. And out in the field, the scarecrow stands beneath the moonlight, its head tilted just enough to catch the glow. No one goes near it anymore. The locals just nod toward the field and keep driving, no matter what they think they see in the dark. Because the scarecrow still stands there, waiting, watching, learning who looks back. And if you ever meet its gaze, even for a second, you'll dream of wheat fields whispering your name. Mr. Elroy's Scarecrows by the Prowler. The Elroy farm sat on the outskirts of town. There weren't too many homes out that way, just 3 neighboring farms and 2 standalone homes. Now the children who lived around there were always told not to step foot on Mr. Elroy's property. The young ones abided, but the older kids, the teenagers, were always messing around in his cornfield and tearing down his scarecrows. Mr. Elroy would chase them off with a pitchfork, calling them every name in the book. Every morning he would go into town and deliver fresh corn from his fields, always complaining to the teenagers' parents about the mess they caused, and never having a kind word for anybody. As it got closer and closer to Halloween, people in town claimed Mr. Elroy was becoming more and more agitated by the day, but things reached its boiling point the day before Halloween. They say he blazed into town in his old pickup, screaming and hollering out of the window. He came to a screeching stop in front of the farmer's market, got out of his old busted pickup truck, and shouted and complained to any parent he could find. See, the night before, not only did the teenage children tear down his scarecrows, but they destroyed all of his Halloween decorations. He begged and pleaded for something to be done to these destructive teenagers, but their parents would just look at him and bullshit him. Yes, Mr. Elroy, we'll punish them. Or yes, Mr. Elroy, we'll ground them. But he knew it was just bullshit. He saw those kids out and about every day and night, walking past his farm. Mr. Elroy was done. He lost it at that very moment, on that very spot. He screamed at the top of his lungs for everyone to hear. If changes were not made, and if something wasn't done, he would take matters into his own hands. Now, sadly, no one must have believed Mr. Elroy, because his threats were not listened to. The parents, as usual, did not punish their children. Halloween was the next night, a Halloween that will be unforgettable to those who live there for the rest of their days and future generations. It's said that when Mr. Elroy returned home, he was still angry. But to calm his nerves, he put back up his Halloween decorations, making his farm look the most festive in the entire town. Then, put back together and erected his scarecrows. He worked all through the night, making sure his farm was ready for Halloween. As midday afternoon approached the next day, all the teenagers gathered after school and decided to dress up and go trick-or-treating, even though they were all too old to still be doing so. But it wasn't the candy they were after. Sure, it's nice to get free candy, they thought, but they were interested in more sinister pursuits. That evening, they all walked past Mr. Elroy, sitting on his porch, on their way home to get dressed up for the night. They stopped and looked at him. One of the boys yelled, "Hey, old man, we'll be back tonight, and you have a surprise coming to you." It is said that Mr. Elroy just sat there and grinned, grinning a wide, sinister smile from ear to ear. As it got dark, the group of teenagers gathered together. All but one showed. No one knows why that member of the group didn't show. Some say they had gotten sick. Others say they thought something bad might happen that night. Whatever the case, the rest of the group plotted their plans of cruel pranks and tricks for the night, from stealing younger kids' candy to egging people's houses and leaving bags of flaming shit on people's front porches. They say the group was horrible that Halloween, causing nothing but trouble in the neighborhood the whole night. The last time anyone officially saw them was about 10 o'clock, heading down the road towards Mr. Elroy's farm. midnight, however, the teenagers' parents started to get worried. They searched the entire neighborhood, but found nothing. They went to the home of the teenage girl, who decided not to go, and asked her if she knew what they were doing that night. She said yes, and told them they were going to go down to Mr. Elroy's farm and really destroy the place, worse than ever before. When the parents heard that, they looked at each other in shock and utter dread, with the threats from Mr. Elroy playing through their heads. They rushed down the old dirt road and stopped in front of his farm. The whole house was lit, with dimly lit orange and purple lights strung up over the porch and roof. But just beyond the wood fence, one of the parents noticed a row of scarecrows, much more than he usually has, they thought. One of the parents shined a flashlight at the row of scarecrows. They looked bloodied, and the parents noticed that they were dressed very similar to what their children were wearing when they left. A few of the parents jumped the fence when they saw this. When they reached the row of scarecrows, they saw that they were completely covered in fresh blood. One of the fathers pulled the sack off one of the scarecrows' heads. Then a scream rang out from one of the mothers. It was her child. Then one by one, they took off the sacks, and each time revealed the next parent's child, all lined up in a row. There was a silence in the air from the shock and disbelief. The only thing that broke it was a maniacal laugh from the porch. It was Mr. Elroy. "How do you like it?" The display was rushed, but all in all, I think I did a pretty damn good job, if I do say so myself. I told you, if you didn't do something about those menacing kids, then I would handle them myself. The Scarecrow. I recently moved into an old farmhouse, and I was preparing my home for its first Halloween. Cobwebs on the bushes, plastic body parts hanging off my oak tree, and I was just putting the finishing touches to the blood splatter on my door. Since I was too old to be scared by this silly holiday, I reasoned that it was my turn to do the scaring instead. It was dark now, and I could barely make out the dark shapes in my neighbor's cornfield. To my shock, the old tattered scarecrow seemed to move, but stubbornly, I refused to move. It took irregular long strides with impossibly long legs and leapt over the wooden fence, heading straight for me. I tried to reason in my head what I must be seeing, but I lost my nerve and slammed the door shut. And I felt silly for a moment, nearly convincing myself that it was just some drunk playing a joke, until there was a loud, unsettling thump against my door, causing me to fall back to the floor. I crawled back slowly, feeling my heart pounding. From the door window, I could see his face slam against the glass, and he could see me, with his wild, bloodshot eyes peeking from the holes in his burlap sack mask. I felt my blood run cold when the knob slowly starts to turn. Damn it. I forgot to lock the door. Jed by the Prowler. There once was a farmer named Nathan. He lived alone and lived a modest life. Day in and day out he toiled his fields and tended to his cows. But there was something missing. Nathan was lonely. "Just a friend. All I need is a friend," he would say out loud as he looked up to the sky. But no one would be his friend. He tried to befriend the delivery man. He tried to befriend the shopkeepers when he delivered his crops. But nothing. No one wanted to be his friend. As a matter of fact, they were rude to him. So one day Nathan decided to make his own friend. He made a scarecrow and called him Jed. The lonely farmer took Jed everywhere. No matter what Nathan did, Jed was right beside him. Whether it was milking the cows, to picking his crops, and even accompanied him on deliveries, Nathan would talk to Jed as if he was alive. He would ask his opinion. He would joke with him to pass the time, and even feed him through the mouth slit he gave him. And after Nathan's day was done, he would bring Jed inside with him and sit him by the fire to keep warm. Then he would go upstairs to go to bed, then wake up and start his day with Jed all over again. Nathan and his new friend were content and happy, inseparable in living their lives. Yes, people would now make fun of Nathan, especially the children in town, but the farmer did not care, for he had his friend, and he was happy. Everything was fine in the farmer's life until the day before Halloween. A group of the town's unsavory youths cornered Nathan on his farm and began to make fun of him. They wanted Jed, but he wouldn't give 'em up. The group then began to attack Nathan, punching and kicking him, all the while continuing to taunt him. One of the boys then brought Nathan up to his feet and punched him. The punch sent Nathan flying, and when he fell, he landed head first on a sharp corner of his tractor. Nathan laid there and bled to death. He could have been saved if one of the boys went to get help, but instead, they just stood there and continued to ridicule him. Jed saw the whole thing. Before leaving, the group took their anger out on Jed, throwing him to the ground, and began to kick and punch him. They tore his seams and ripped out his stuffing, laughing the whole time doing it. Even one boy urinating on Jed before the group finally left. The two friends were left lying in the field next to each other. Poor Nathan was dead. Well, through some strange cosmic magic in the universe, Jed was brought to life to seek his revenge. It was now the next day, Halloween. The same group of boys continued their tormenting ways, stealing candy from younger children, egging houses, destroying property, until Jed caught up with them late into the night. Halloween ended with Jed ripping them limb from limb, leaving each of their mangled corpses in their front yards like some ghoulish Halloween decoration. Nathan's body was finally found days later when he didn't show up for his deliveries. And as for Jed, he was found sitting inside by the fireplace, covered in blood. He had gotten his revenge. Revenge for his friend.